that's the action of the school boards, both the state school board and the local school boards, related to critical race theory. And Grace Aiken from the Georgia Association of Educators is going to talk to us about that. And then we're going to have a little bit of a deep dive into what used to be called the Georgia Voter Guide and what is now called the Directory of Georgia Candidates. And we're going to talk about the impact of that and municipal races. And then we're going to hear from our own Judy Jones about an organization that she started and maintains called Esteem Yourself High. And then we're going to hear about the various work going on among some of the Troubler work groups and our partners. So it is, as always, a really full agenda. We're going to do our best to get through all of it. And a couple of just reminders: we record this meeting, and it's really for troublers who aren't able to be here with us on Zoom. And also, we're going to ask folks to stay muted unless you're, unless you're speaking. And I want to invite you to really use the chat fully and completely and frequently. And as always, there is a live transcript going on for those who need it, that's underway right now. And a few people have joined us. We usually have a song at the end, and if Kay Renee is still with us at the end, we might ask her again. But for some reason, I am really wanting to start with a song. It feels like it lifts us up and fills our hearts. And Kay Renee has a voice that is as close to an angel's voice as any I know. And Kay Renee, can I ask you to unmute yourself and to give us
Yes,
the
ma'am.
gift of whatever song you like? I'm going to turn this over to you.
Well, actually, it just changed about 5 minutes before I got on the call. And it was a commercial, and it jogged my memory. Um, Ambassador Young's favorite song is What a Wonderful World. And when I think about what all that can mean, we all, as I always say, have a charge to keep. And it is our charge to make this world as wonderful as we can while we're here, using our own talent, skills, and abilities to do that. So, so I haven't sang this in a while. The last time I did sing it was for him. So, guys, I do remember most of the lyrics, but please take it in the spirit that it's meant. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see babies crying, yeah. I'll watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, Renee, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
What a gift that was. What a gift that was, and what a perfect beginning.
My
Thank you for
pleasure.
doing it.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
We love you.
We love you. And even though Becky, this is my gift back after all the years of working in civil rights. It's every talent, skill, and ability that God has given us. We have to use that for any way that we can utilize it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. And just for those who haven't heard Kay Renee before or haven't heard about her, she is steeped in decades of civil rights work. and links so much astonishing work, and we are so grateful to have her with us. So thank you, Kay Renee. Okay, so on that wonderful note of using our skills and abilities, I would like to introduce Grace Aiken. I have been a great fan of Grace's for a number of years, and I want to just say a little bit before I turn this over to her. Grace got her law degree from Emory almost 10 years ago. She has done a ton in the last 10 years. She's been an assistant public defender. She's been regional director for Stacey's campaign. She was deputy director for the Innocence Project. She was both the deputy and executive director for Rep GA, doing candidate recruitment and training. And she is now the state campaign director for the Georgia Association of Educators. And she's here today to talk to us about what's been going on at the state school board and at the level of local school boards, the very, very troubling decisions that have been made related to critical race theory. So Grace, welcome. It is a beyond lovely to have you here. And would you unmute yourself and let me turn this over to you?
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for inviting me. It's so wonderful to see y'all's beautiful faces. I see some familiar friends here. Pam, shout out to you. Laura Nieto, haven't seen you in a while. Haven't seen you since Stacey's campaign, so that's really cool. Ted Golden, I see you too. Robin, hello. Great to see y'all. Okay, so now that we got the pleasantries out of the way, I am coming to you as the state campaign director from Georgia, for Georgia Association of Educators, but more importantly, I'm coming to you as a resident, lifelong citizen of the state of Georgia, who cares deeply about the direction that our state unfortunately is taking. And we see this highlighted in the dismantling of public education, but I think this issue around critical race theory is a swirl and so much broader than just public education, but it is a swirl of just so many different issues, but particularly is hitting our public education systems. So I do have a presentation. I hope y'all will bear with me. I do try to keep this as interactive as possible just because I don't want people to get bored. Everybody's so tired of Zooms. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, and then I'm going to lean on you, Becky, or anyone else to just let me know if there are questions that I can answer in the moment. All right, so let me get this. All right, can y'all see that? Okay, great. So the first thing I want to say is that Becky approached me to ask about, or to talk about what critical race theory is. And I want to just go ahead and frame this entire conversation as what we're really talking about in this whole diabolical move by the rabid right is not really about critical race theory, which I'll get into what that is. And I know you guys are so educated and curious that you probably could teach this better than I can. And by no means do I profess to be an expert in this. But I do want to say that this isn't really about critical race theory. This is about the intent to censor American history in our schools. So just in terms of the narrative, we're trying to stay away from away from calling this critical race theory, and instead trying to reframe it as an attempt to censor American history, the freedom to teach, and honesty in education. So I'm gonna give you guys a quote, which, you know, given this group, I don't think that y'all are going to feel uncomfortable with it, but I felt it necessary to highlight. So Charles Blow, I'm not sure if any of y'all are familiar with him. He's a great writer, writes for New York Times, actually just moved back to Atlanta, published this book called A Rescue Plan for Black America. And in it he says, whenever Black people make progress, white people feel threatened and respond forcefully. Emancipation and the Civil War gave rise to the Ku Klux Klan, which formed just months after the war ended. The Supreme Court's decision in Brown v. Board of Education striking down racial segregation in schools gave rise to the White Supremacist Citizens Council. And I would also add, just me personally, segregation academies, which we see are basically private schools subsidized by vouchers. He goes on to say the election of the first Black president gave rise to the Tea Party. It took centuries for America to hone its instruments of oppression. Every time part of it fell, it simply reemerged in a more elegant form. Battling racism in this country is like cutting heads off the Hydra. We are in a position of this country's democracy and history, and where history is converging with the present, where we have people who want to talk openly about what has shaped our systems, our laws, our policies today, and people who refuse to come to grips with that reality. So, actually, I went back. Okay, so I wanted to start off with what critical race theory is, which is it's an academic research discipline that started around the 70s and 80s and actually originated in legal circles, but it's used in higher ed, typically used for the purpose of studying systemic racial inequality. It's not a diversity and inclusion training. It's not a K through 12 curriculum. Like I said, it is concentrated in higher education. So the principles align with understanding that we are talking about systems, policies, laws that lead to a structural system of racism and outcomes. So for the first principle, race is not biologically real. What they're saying is basically that race is a social construct. It is created by us as humans for power's sake. The second, I think, big tenet is that racism is embedded in our institutions. So we cannot assume that there are just bad apples or that there are just, random racist incidents. It is part of a structural and systemic racist culture in our community, in our country. And then I think the third thing is it recognizes that neither people nor systems are colorblind. By ignoring race, you are not demonstrating neutrality. What you are is perpetuating the existing racial hierarchy. So we know what it is and what it is not at this point. I mean, I think I also, I might be skipping around here and there, but there's this movement, if you will, that originated with Trump's presidency, where in September of 2020, President Trump issued an executive order that basically barred any sort of diversity and inclusion type of training that they consider to be quote unquote divisive. So what that means is any organization, or excuse me, any federal contracts that required diversity and inclusion training effectively became synonymous with critical race theory and therefore barred. So I want to bring some history into this, but long story short, this is part of a wider disinformation campaign where you have people reacting to what I believe is the events of January 6th of this year, 2021. So 1619 Project, are y'all familiar with that at all? Okay, so 1619 Project is basically a project done by the New York Times through photos, essays, poems, and the like, commemorating the first time that Black people were brought over to America as slaves. And it's designed to re-examine the legacy of slavery in the United States. So 1776 Project, which if you look that up, you'll see Black faces as props for the 1776 Project. But the 1776 Project is a response to the 1619 Project that is essentially that is essentially a plot to reshape the concept of critical race theory into indoctrination, into being synonymous with indoctrination. It's also, the project has, in addition to changing the narrative on what exactly critical race theory is and trying to make it so that anything that white people find objectionable with respect to race is kept out of our history books. They're also targeting school board races. So I'll get into that for the later part, but basically you should know that this is a very coordinated, very intentional effort to undermine the progress that our country is making. So the disinformation campaign that the 1776 Project is espousing, it's actually, they're pretty brazen about it. And you'll see, so there's been some research done on the social media airwaves and how the right wing is exclusively, or if not exclusively, then nearly completely generating this stir up about critical race theory in our K through 12 schools. And, you know, I want to say that they know exactly what they're doing. This is, like I said, a coordinated effort, and they are not going to let up. They're not. So I think it's really important for us to pay attention to what's going on in our school board races. Y'all are part of this group because you are very tuned in, but I would ask you if you can just get other people that you know are not necessarily on the up and up on these issues. The first thing is to let them know that this is part of a disinformation campaign. So Christopher Rufo, whose tweet you see here on this page, he is actually a former advisor of President Trump, and he is the one who spearheaded the 1776 Project. And he specifically says in this tweet, "We have successfully frozen the brand of critical race theory into the public conversation and are steadily driving up negative perceptions. We will eventually turn it toxic as we put all of the various cultural insanities under that brand category. The goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. We have decodified the term and will recodify it to annex the entire range of cultural constructions that are," shoot, I can't see the rest of this, but you all get the point. So this is intentional. Just make no mistake about it. I want to say that it's highly concentrated in social media, but we're also seeing it in our school board meetings, and I'll get to that. But understand that people don't know that this is actually a disinformation campaign. They think that this is legit. And the reason why you're seeing I would say a lot of Black people behind this is because they too are being duped into supporting what they think is trying to be neutral and just allowing our students to teach, not realizing that they're actually pawns in this grand scheme, if you will. So again, if you Google 1776 Project and you just look at photos, it's primarily going to be Black people who are behind a podium proposing these things. And also even in articles, I think there was like an Atlantic article, maybe it was Daily Mail, I think, which is in the UK. But basically, Black people they're using Black people to promote this theory. So speaking of the school board resolution that brings us all here today. So has anybody taken the time to read? I think it's like 4 pages, and it's an emergency school board resolution that the Georgia State School Board passed on, I think, late May, early June of this year. Has anybody read that or had access to it? It's okay if you haven't. All right, so I'm going to show you this little tidbit right here. The first line says, "We, the State Board of Education for the state of Georgia, believe the United States of America is not a racist country and that the state of Georgia is not a racist state." Now, hold up. Can we just sit with that for a second? I'm actually going to put it to y'all. Does anybody here, I know y'all don't agree with it, but can you talk about what that brings up within you when you see that this is the first line of this resolution?
So Gareth is saying denying reality.
Did you
Anger.
want us to talk or just
Yeah,
type?
please talk if you like.
Starting first with a lie. So
I think nothing new.
I think that there's a trend primarily in the Republican movement that if you say something long, like enough times, they think people will believe it. And too often, unfortunately, they do. And this is another example.
Yeah, Robin is correct. I feel the same way.
And some things in the
Another thought
chat.
that came to mind.
Go ahead.
One thing that came to mind with my work with SCLC, many years ago, before the hashtags, before there was cameras, many people were in denial that the organizations were even still needed. So that's when I say nothing new. It's that same denial, just in a different way. And a lot of it, you're right, comes from even the Black community. Back then, they were even telling me, we don't need it anymore. This is not the case. And so even with the footage, right, it's still for me nothing new. It's just, unfortunately, I hope it's not the fabric of our country, but it's something that's continuous.
Because it is a disinformation campaign, these are things that it depends on who's reading this statement. I listened when they passed the resolution here. I listened to all the people talking and and while they said one thing with their mouths, they voted to make sure that our history was not in the schools. It does not matter to me what you say. Just because you say it is not a racist country, it depends on who's reading that. I'm an African-American woman, and if I'm reading that, I know darn well it's racist. And I know the state of Georgia is racist because I've lived it. That does not make it true just because you said that. And while they skirted all around the speakers, I thought that, I said, okay, we've got some people here who really understand what's going on, and they're going to act accordingly. Well, when they voted, they all voted in favor of it.
Thank you, PJ.
I get emotional.
I get emotional too. Everybody here, I'm sure. So I want to bring that to the peanut gallery, because basically they've got us getting really angry about this, clearly putting this factually incorrect statement into a resolution because they want to get us distracted. This is about making us argue whether or not the sky is a pineapple. The sky is not a pineapple. We all know that. The United States of America is a racist country. We all know that. The state of Georgia is a racist country, factually so. But they have us arguing and debating about whether or not that's the case. And I think that is why this is so insidious, because we are supposed to be, at least the Board of Education, the State Board of Education is supposed to have the back of students, every public school student in this state. And in fact, I believe it's 3/5 of public school students are students of color. So when you put out that resolution or put out that statement that says this is what we believe, you are denying the lived experience of the majority of students in public schools in the state of Georgia. That's what this is about.
Well, the second sentence is so contradictory to what the first sentence is. Because if you're making decisions affecting K through 12 public best interest of all students, then you're going to teach the truth. You're not going to, if it's in the best interest. And then providing highest quality to every child without political bias or political influence. Again, that's the same contradictory thing of what they wrote in the first statement.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Karen. So, that actually brings up another point, which is in the effort to dismantle public education in this state, what they have done is decentralize the State Board of Education so that local districts decide, let the locals have control. Local control is what they call it. And so by saying, okay, you locals get to decide everything, but you can't decide this. You can't talk about this. That in and of itself is hypocritical. That in and of itself is it's so predictable almost. It's like we know that they're going to claim one thing today, but then tomorrow it'll be something else, right? The other thing I wanted to mention is that this resolution goes on to say that, for example, a teacher cannot provide student credit for a student who decides to work on a campaign, do any sort of lobbying efforts, or work with any organization that does lobbying efforts. And so what that means is it's discouraging students from civic engagement. And that too is a problem, right? I mean, what is the point of education if not to pump out an educated citizenry that can make decisions for our local communities, right? Or at least make informed decisions to better our local communities. So it reeks of hypocrisy. It reeks of, you know, this gaslighting and, I mean, the works. I want to also mention that a resolution is just a statement of beliefs. It does not carry the weight of law. And so what we're anticipating is these local school boards, they're going to be the ones to adopt these resolutions. In fact, we've seen it in some North Georgia counties like Cherokee. They tried to adopt it in Gwinnett, but they weren't able to, in part because of the makeup of the Gwinnett Board of Education. But ultimately, we're going to keep seeing this happen, right? We're going to see this at local school boards because they know that there will be litigation as a result if they were to pass a rule at the state level. Make no mistake about it, they will pass a rule though. They were able to pass this resolution 11 years. And the only two people who voted against it were the two Black men on the state board. Meanwhile, the Black woman voted for it. And in fact, she said during the comments or during the debate, she basically embraced the whataboutism argument, which is, well, slavery has happened in all societies across, throughout history. The United States is no different. Ergo, there's no reason to discuss this like it's an issue here in America, which is just completely bonkers, quite frankly. So I think in part, and also I want to mention that resolution, it was an emergency resolution. They didn't have the meeting during a regularly called session of the. Instead, they called an emergency meeting at the behest of Governor Kemp, who was going into the GOP convention and wanted to curry favor with his supporters. I will say a little footnote that he was booed at the convention by these supporters, so that was a little nice to hear, but at the same time, they still were able to pass this resolution. So what's the next step? They're likely going to pass a rule, which again, that's going to lead to litigation. They're also going to pass legislation next session, guaranteed. In fact, I'm hearing that Clint Dixon out of North Georgia, I think it's Lumpkin County, will be carrying the bill. And what we're seeing is that not just here in the state, of course, we're seeing it nationally, but the language remains the same. They are trying to pass the same type of legislation in every state at every level that they possibly can to entrench this language so that this is what we're talking about instead of the actual facts and the realities. I see S. McWethy's hand.
Yes, hi. The damage has been done, whether there's legislation or not. This resolution is going to scare teachers. It's very unclear what they're allowed to teach. And I think that's the most serious part of this, because all they had to do was pass this resolution. And that's enough to scare teachers into submission.
1000%. Thank you for sharing that.
I am an educator, a teacher who actually do different populations in different schools. And as a Latina, an immigrant, of course, there were even racist comments toward me. I can give you examples how that happened in the classroom. But one thing that I really feel it helped, I know besides what is going on here, but I actually organized trips that I took them outside of the United States
Mm.
I took them to Mexico, Spain, Costa Rica, and their brains really changed it. When they went there, they realized it. The reality that they thought, they read, or the parents told you was completely different. So I don't know how, but I think we need to have more programs, either to travel or either have programs on TV about others. The United States has only one history. They don't have another language, they don't have another history. So this is the whole entire world. And we are inside trying to fight back. We had to fight back in a different way too.
Thank you, Laura. I want to return to, I only see your email, but SMC Wethy, S. McWethy. What you said about instilling or making teachers fearful. You're absolutely right, because if you go on to read the rest of this resolution, it's super vague. I mean, if nothing else, that's actually a Fifth Amendment challenge that could be made against it, if assuming they do make a rule or legislation even. But by making it so vague, they are setting teachers up for failure, right? Because they don't know what the parameters are of social studies teachers, American history teachers, you know, the government, AP government. I took all those classes, right? If I didn't, and I'll just be honest, when I took AP US history in the 11th grade, I was told that I had to say that slavery, excuse me, that the Civil War did not start because of slavery, it started because of economics in order to get a 4 or a 5. I got a 4. But that's how it works in this, in our school systems, unfortunately. And so I think with the vagueness of this language, you know, what they're going to do is try to take out pieces in of curriculum written by Black authors, written by or any sort of mediums that have people of color's authorship. They're going to remove that from the curriculum. I can imagine that we'll also see whole subjects that are being taught in schools no longer taught, like government, like current issues. Those were two classes that I taught, or that I took in high school, that we're seeing further and further. Teachers are just becoming so scared about teaching it that they don't have the teachers for it, particularly since COVID. And I think there's the level of legislation that could be passed, you know, because educators are being attacked on all different sides. We're seeing more and more of a, I want to say the quality and the caliber of educators is going down, particularly educators of color. They're not able to get into the systems. So those are sort of, I would say, intended consequences of this type of resolution that we need to be aware of. Okay, so I talked about the local school board. I want every one of you to encourage and to also go to your school board meetings, because your presence there, I guarantee you there's going to be 2 rabid right-wingers who are there just for the purpose of showing that they think, or making us believe that there is more people on their side than there are on the side of reality, and also to get the TV there, to get news media coverage there. When you show up with a well-crafted argument as to why this is ridiculous, which I know you're not going to use the words ridiculous, but I can say that hopefully with y'all, then that's what gets the media coverage. That's what people end up talking about. And it almost actually, I think, makes us feel more relief when we hear at least a reasonable alternative to the nonsense. So I want to show you guys, this is a woman named Melanie, oh goodness, what's her last name? Melanie Moore. She just appeared at the Gwinnett school board meeting. And I don't know if I can expand this for y'all. Can y'all hear this?
No.
No, no.
Nope.
Okay, let me, I think it's share sound. I think it's share sound. All right.
District 2. And
Can y'all hear me now?
good evening, board members. My name is Melanie Moore. I am the parent of a 3rd and 4th grader in District 2, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. The issue I would like to address is the need for equitable education in all areas. But first, I'd like to share a little something personal. I struggle with depression. I have for many years. I've gone to counselors throughout the years, and one of the first things they ask me is, tell me about your family of origin. Tell me about your past. What happened to you in your past that is causing the current trauma and pain that you're feeling? In the same way, our country cannot begin to heal until we deal with the pain, trauma, and hurt from our past. We must teach our children the truth about the past and then show them how to be the change we wish to see in the world. We can help them connect the dots from the awful events of the past to the current issues that face our country so that real change can happen. As members of the white community, we have got to stop pushing the agenda that diversity and truth in education is all about indoctrination, shaming, or placing guilt at the feet of white people. No one is asking you to get up and place your head on the chopping block for the wrongs of the past. People are simply asking for their stories to be heard and taught as ours have been for generations. I would not allow my children to wallow in anger, pain, and self-pity. I would do all I could to help them to be the very best versions of themselves, even if it hurts to point out some painful truths about their behavior. In the same way, we have got to be honest with ourselves and admit that systemic racism is real, that this country was created and prospered under the ideals of white supremacy, and that we are responsible for righting the wrongs of our forefathers. We did not create this mess, but we are the ones that have to clean it up, starting with honest, equitable education practices now that will teach our children the hard truths about our past so that they can create a better future. I understand that change is hard, but it's got to come. Racism is alive and well in this country. It's seen in the groups of white men with torches chanting, "You will not replace us," to the fact that in 2021, we still don't have a federal anti-lynching hate crime law. We need to know better, and then we need to do better. Happy Pride, happy early Juneteenth. Good evening, board members. My name is Melanie Moore. I am the...
All right. I know that makes y'all feel some type of way, and it certainly makes me feel like some type of way. So that's why I want to encourage y'all to show up to your school board meetings. I mean, at the end of the day, even if you don't have kids in the system, your tax dollars are being used to fund the school. So you have every right to participate. And I think, you know, if nothing else, we want to show support for our educators, for our teachers. They should not be barred from connecting and linking events of the past to present inequities. They should not be targeted for having discussions about systemic racism. And so we need to show them support by showing up to these meetings as well. If we do end up, if the school board ends up proposing a rule, that means that a 30-day, they must adhere to a 30-day comment period, which means you can submit a public comment and that will be available. I will make it a point to share that with Becky as soon as they do decide to a rule. But we will also have language that you can use to put in your public comments so that we can all be coordinated. The next thing I want to also suggest is, if you guys haven't already seen some of the ridiculousness that's going on with social media and
critical race theory, like I said, it's the rabid right wing that is overpowering the social media airwaves with this type of narrative. And so at the gae.org/campaigns page, you can scroll down to Honesty in Education. We have tons of resources for you. I am not a website expert by any means, so you might see this on your phone and it might be, the placement of these objects might be a little bit off, but long story short, this is meant to be a resource for you. And so this has a lot of the information that we discussed, including resources. I want to highlight some of these great resources, including the American Bar Association, some articles, I'm sure you guys have probably read them, the Pew Charitable Trust, and so on. Then we also created, or I created social media shareables. because it's, you know, it's being, because the social media airwaves are controlled by you know, one side, we need to counter that. So I would encourage you to use these social media graphics just to, you know, have something different that we can refer to in the social media space, because they're the only ones who are controlling it right now. And my favorite is the Wonder Woman. I made that. Okay, so last thing is the Anti-Defamation League. We are partnering with them to see if we can get some legislation, some counter legislation written. And what we'd like to do is, we know that even with a rule, even with their own, with the other side's legislation that they're proposing or going to propose, we know that it's not enough to say, no, don't do that, because they're still going to do it. But at least we can drum up media coverage and support by creating our own counter bill, if you will. And so the Anti-Defamation League, I'm in early talks with them about, you know, taking that on. They're talking with their lobbyists about drafting language, but they're also going to, or thinking about putting on a webinar, which, you know, at this point, you know, I'm sure you guys hopefully will go to the campaigns and elections page to look at those resources, and you may not even need to go to the webinar. But if you find that there's somebody who would like to, you know, feel free to send them to that. And again, as soon as I find out when that's happening, I will send that to Becky and make sure it gets disseminated, and she'll make sure it gets disseminated to y'all. The last thing I want to say is, you got to run for local office. Everybody's thinking about the 2022 elections, yet this is the year that we have municipal races and school board races. And unfortunately, we don't have enough good progressives, people who are committed to honesty and education, running for those seats. And so it's really important to, I know, especially for women, we got a lot of women on this call, especially for women, it takes us 7 times to be asked before we actually decide to run. But just know, this is one of those times I'm asking you to run for office. Whatever local race you think is not that important, of course it is. I mean, that's why y'all are here. So it's really, I would encourage you to at least consider, if you know, just think about it and talk to people that you think might be interested in running for local office. All right, I think now questions or comments.
Grace, can I,
Sorry. Becky,
go ahead.
Can I say one more thing?
You betcha, you betcha.
Okay, all right, I just want to speak to the quote that I started off with, which was the fact that we're seeing this new attempt to unravel our democracy and our way of our history, in our future too. The American people, Georgians, voted Trump out. And you've got idiots who stormed the Capitol because they just didn't want to believe that we had the sense enough to go vote our conscience and get him out. And now they're attempting to erase it from the history books and tell us that the sky is a pineapple. I have to say, enough with it, because everywhere you look, the medium and long-term warning lights are flashing bright red. Whether it's in education, housing, wealth and income inequality, policing, climate, we have to do something, and we have to do it now. There's no time to wait on incremental change. This is urgent. And I just want to put it to you that we must act with urgency. We cannot just assume that somebody else is going to take up the mantle and fix it for us. All right, now I'm done. Thank you.
Grace, thank you so incredibly much. That was fantastic. Can we just yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was hugely helpful. I want to, Grace, would you be available if folks have, because there are a couple of folks who have their hands up.
Yeah.
Would you mind, can we move the questions to the chat? And do you have time to just answer them in the chat? Would that be okay, just in the interest of time? And let me highlight one of the questions that hasn't been answered yet that Tara Doyle wrote was, what do you think will happen in Decatur, since the city schools of Decatur have said they remain committed to addressing origins and presence of race and racism? That's one question. And I know that PJ had her hand up. And so PJ, if you don't mind putting your question in the chat, do you mind doing that? And then Grace can answer that. Is that all right?
Yep.
Beautiful. Okay. And let me just say that this is something that, again, just to reiterate, Grace will send calls to action to me when there are them. Follow-up links will be going out to everybody. We will continue to track this. We know that what is happening in the school boards in Georgia is happening all over the country. And we are going to stay on this sucker because it is right at the edge of what matters. And Grace, thank you beyond all measure for the work you are always doing. Gratitude, 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 and gratitude for coming and helping us get up to speed.
Thank you. Sorry I went over time, but thank
Totally
you.
fine, totally fine, totally fine. We love you, we love you.
Love you too.
All righty. We could talk about this for the rest of the meeting. I just want to acknowledge that, and I want to just like way acknowledge that, and maybe at a subsequent meeting we will talk about it for the whole thing, because unfortunately it is probably not going away. We are, however, going to transition to, and this, let me say that Grace gave us a terrific kind of lead in to the issue of local races. And the way we're going to talk about this by talking about the directory of Georgia candidates, which used to be called the Georgia Voter Guide. And it's one of the things that, in terms of necessary trouble, not the thing, but certainly one of the things that I think we can be most proud of. And there are a lot of folks who are familiar with it, but a lot of folks that are with us who are not. Pam Woodley is going to provide an overview of it. Tammy Payne and Asa Royal are going to talk about the municipal projects and the volunteers that we need to help track the municipal elections. And then I'm going to say a little bit about the impact of the directory and also the importance of these local races that are happening this year. So let me start by turning this over to Pam Woodley, who is the day-to-day coordinator of the Directory of Georgia Candidates. Pam, do you want to share your screen, or let me just turn this over to you? And you're muted.
Muted, unmute. All right. First, I just wanted to tell you a few things about it before we dive into the spreadsheet, because it's a lot to look at once. But it's basically just a big Google sheet. It's got multiple tabs for each type of elections. So we've got a tab for the statewide elections, of which there are about 10 positions. U.S. House of Representatives, of which there are 14. Georgia House, there's 180. Georgia Senate, there's 56. All the county commissioners, there's 900. Municipal, which is the focus of this year, there's 3,000 to 4,000 positions in Georgia. We went down to every itty bitty legal entity city that exists. School board, there's about 750 positions, judicial about 650, and criminal justice about 300. So in total, this directory covers 6,000 to 7,000 elected positions in Georgia. All state, all local, county, state. And yes, Grace gave us a huge segue, because you know what important issues those races cover. And one thing we have found is that there is nothing like this anywhere else in the country. And it is Becky's baby. I'm the babysitter now, but yeah, it is. We've worked with some national progressive organizations, and they are amazed by it. They are so impressed. It's pretty cool, sitting here as a bunch of old ladies and showing these young kids this thing we've done, and they're just completely amazed. It's all volunteer. It's a publicly available database, and we've really scrubbed it of any partisan terminology. So we use all nonpartisan language in it, and it is publicly available. But individual voters can use this thing. It's actually really handy. But the main audience, which Becky is going to go into, are progressive activist groups, to use it to get an overview of our next upcoming elections. Where do we need people to run? Where do we need candidates? Where where is there going to be a special election, which gives us extra opportunity, to flip a seat maybe. The other thing I'm going to show you, what you're going to see is that after we sort by those types of races, like statewide, Congress, et cetera, the next sort in each tab is next election date. So that's the next most important field, is when is the next election? And they're grouped by next election date from nearest to furthest. So we can really get a landscape of what's coming up. And then I want to tell you about the color coding before we look at it. You're going to see that as we talk about the House, Georgia Senate, and congressional districts, you're going to see some red and blue coding for those districts. And those indicate what we call battleground districts, where the parties are in they could flip back and forth between one party or the other. If they're red, they are battleground currently Republican, held by a Republican, and if they're blue, they're battleground, but currently held by a Democrat. And you're going to see that we have columns that, and this is something that isn't in any other kind of database that we know of. There will be columns that show which districts overlap with others. So for example, for a Georgia House district, which Georgia Senate and which congressional districts overlap with that district. And the reason we do that is because that allows us to see, where we should be concentrating resources. Where could a single voter impact like 3 battleground seats, and maybe a single voter could help flip 3 seats rather than just one. Okay, so let's look at it. Okay, so this is just the header tab that shows all the color coding and what it all means. And then you can see, if you look across the bottom, I hope all the different tabs: statewide, U.S. House, Georgia Senate, county, municipal, school board, judicial, and criminal justice. So those 7,000 seats. So here's, so statewide, you can see, like I said, they're in order of next election. So all the November 2022s are right here at the top. And we've got the incumbents. So here's Brian Kemp in row 4 as governor. He's a Republican, as we know. He is an incumbent, and we can track for those incumbents whether they're not running, resigned, or deceased. That gives us, opportunities where there's empty seats up for grabs. Then we include their campaign social media accounts. So here's his website, his Facebook page, and his Twitter. And these are all live links. So you can see how it could be really helpful for an individual voter in that way, that they can research their candidates that are available to them. But just the overview, you can see how it's going to be really useful for activist groups to see, where don't we have challengers. I bet you all didn't know that Brad Raffensperger already has 7 opponents, 3 Republicans, 4 Democrats. So to show you the impact of the color coding, I'm going to look at Rebecca Mitchell's district. So I'm in the Georgia House tab now. So you see in column A, we're going to have our 180 Georgia House districts, and we've got some highlighted red, which means they're battleground. They could be flippable. But they are currently held by a Republican, and some highlighted blue. Now, Rebecca Mitchell, she's out in Snellville, a House district out in Snellville. I'm looking in row 131, if you can see the rows. It's like right in the middle there, this one. Last year, she flipped a seat last year. And last year, the way this House district looked, color coding wise, is that HG 106 was red. Congressional District 7 was red. That's where Carolyn Bordeaux flipped a seat. And Senate District 9 was red. That's where Nikki Merritt flipped a seat. So you can see that these would have been battleground red all the way across. So her district out in Snellville was a big focus for our voter registration and our canvassing and stuff, because you see, we successfully flipped 3 seats in that overlapping area. So that's how we use the color coding a lot. And so I think right now, since we're running a little late, I'll turn it over to Tammy, who is going to talk about the municipals, which comprise fully half of this guide by volume and probably 90% by work. Okay, Tammy, want to go ahead?
Hi, everyone. I think Becky has the slide deck to share, or do you want me to do it?
I'm going to share. There we go. Let me share it. And let me, before I turn this over to these folks, let me also say that Pam has been doing a stunning job doing the daily maintenance of this, which is a beast, and just has been doing an incredible job. And the hardest piece of all of this is the municipals. So huge kudos to Tammy Payne, who did it in 2019 and who is managing it again this year. So let me go ahead and turn this now. There we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Becky. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide. And I have to give a shout out because some of our last time around municipal volunteers are out here. I know I'm not going to hit everybody, but thank you, Martha and Robin and Anna Marie. And there are several more of you that I saw, but I don't have my participant list up. But thank you guys, because without you, I would have been up for hours and hours and hours longer than I was last time. So the wonderful thing about this project is that we have a huge opportunity to make a local impact. And so everything that you heard earlier today is absolutely true. We have to save ourselves. We have a whole lot of stuff against us. And this is one opportunity that you can have to make a difference at the local level. Our project has a few different phases. We've already done our kickoff, and we've done some recruiting of a really awesome volunteer who is also on the call. I'd like to introduce Asa. He is our data automation expert, and he has designed a way that I'm not going to have to send copy and paste every single winner into the spreadsheet this time. He is amazing, and so thank you. Shout out to Asa for coming on with and jumping in with both feet. You'll get to see some of his work in a few minutes. We are now currently in the design, and so Asa is working on getting the final forms for our volunteers to be able to easily capture the information. Last go round, we had spreadsheets that all the volunteers had to type a whole bunch of stuff in, and as you'll see in a few minutes, it's going to be a whole lot easier this time around, and it's all thanks to Asa. The big first phase is the data collection for the candidates. And then the second big phase is collecting the data for the winners. And so right now we're getting everything, all of our ducks in a row to make sure that we have as easy a time as possible for our volunteers for both rounds of data collection. We're getting our training materials put together, and we're planning on having volunteer training late July or early August, depending on who signs up and what your availability is, if there happens to be some of this crew, which fingers crossed. So when it comes time to actually put the researcher cap on and get started is going to be mid-August, right after all the qualified candidates are announced. And then we're going to hope to spend the next 2 to 3 weeks. It may go into 4 weeks, but we'd really like to stick to 2 to 3 weeks. And that way that gives voters at least 2 months of seeing the live qualified candidates announced, to do all their research, and for any other groups within Georgia to use that data to help drive, get out the vote and support for candidates in the guide. And then once the election occurs, we'll do a final round of data collection, and then ensure that we have all of the new incumbents that in the guide. So that way in a couple more years or 4 more years, depending on the position, because sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 4, we'll do this again. So that's the timeline. If you don't mind going to the next slide. This is where I'm hoping that I can beg and plead and borrow for some folks to sign up for research. So if you like getting details together and you happen to have some spare time in the mid-August to mid-September timeframe or November, we would love your help. Oh, can you go back one? Sorry, thank you. So from a research process perspective, it's super easy. If you got a device where you can do internet searches for, that's going to be our first pass. If you can quickly and easily get the data, then you'll go to the easy form you're about to see and be able to identify those candidates or those winners, depending on which round of data collection we're doing. For anything that we can't find online, then the next focus is to do phone calls, and we have resources within the guide. We have the most, I have to give a super shout out to Stacy, who has been responsible for making the municipal tab amazing. My chin dropped the first time I saw it after several months because of all the amazing work Stacy has done to that tab. She has just made it so clean, and she has updated all of the links to where you've got some really great accessibility for those different municipals and school boards to find the data. And then if you can't find it online, the links will probably lead you to a phone number. And then we also have a directory of the county election boards that we can also use, but phone calls would be the next step. And then once you have the data, again, you fill out the simple web form that Asa, our genius, has created, and then you go on to the next one. So, okay, now if you don't mind moving to the next tab, please. So from we don't want to just throw you out into the cold. We want to make sure you feel completely comfortable and ready to do the work. So you will, again, we'll have that training session that we talked about. You'll get a copy of that training, both the actual PowerPoint and the recording, if you want to refer back to it. You'll also have a whole list of resources that you can use while you're doing the research. And then you'll have contact info for anything that may come up that was not covered in training, because as we experienced last go round, and Martha can probably attest to this, there were several things that we didn't realize that we had to deal with when we were first collecting it the first time. So we're going to build all that into this current round of training, but I'm sure that since this is a whole new batch of municipalities that we're looking at this go round, I'm sure we're going to find some new stuff too. But there will be me. I'm going to be able to help answer questions. I have a helper that is also going to be working with me and the volunteers. Her name is Julie, and she's also going to be a resource for our volunteers, and she'll be helping, collecting data as well. But between us, we want to make sure that we have all of our volunteers to have the support that they need and the questions answered as soon as we possibly can. So that way you have some really great ability to just go in and do what you need to do and not have to worry about hanging out for answers. We want to make sure we address your questions as quickly as possible. Okay, and then this is the super cool form that Asa shared, or that Asa created. Asa, do you want to come off mute and walk us through this?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome, thank you, sir.
Awesome. So if you, if you saw the big elections master spreadsheet and you look at one of the sections, like say the municipal section, you'll see that there's about 3,000 odd candidates who are running for all sorts of municipal positions in Georgia. And through a bunch of coding stuff, we can basically auto-generate a bunch of surveys. So for each individual race, so in this one, I just chose one that happened to be there. This is the mayoral race in Watkinsville, Georgia. And as Tammy mentioned, there's 2 rounds in this process where we go from this big list of all the candidates to, a list of qualified candidates, and then finally in the second round to a list of winners. So in this survey that's kind of auto-produced, it's taking candidates from that first round who are listed under the Watkinsville mayor race, giving you a checklist of them, and then saying, hey, like, do a little bit of Googling or calling or whatever needs to be done and figure out who's qualified for this race. And if they've qualified, it's as easy as just checking their names off right here. And should there be people who qualified who are on the list, adding their names in the second box and hitting submit. And that will find its way back into the spreadsheet and kind of auto update and let the kind of spreadsheet go through its evolutionary process from 3,000 candidates to qualified candidates to winning candidates without anybody having to manually go out and copy and paste 3,000 lines of spreadsheet stuff. And these two things on the right, you see at the very, very end of me being done, which sadly is not yet, there will be a big spreadsheet of every race that needs to be handled by volunteers. Races that have not been handled that nobody has looked at will be colored gray or some other color that people choose in this spreadsheet you see here on the top right. And then on the bottom right, if you click one of those links on the right and you fill in the survey, it'll turn green, and we can also probably have it so that the volunteer's name goes down and you can see who's done a bunch. But it should be really, really easy to track which races still need to be done, which races need to be done, and to actually do the recording and data collection for the race. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the auto generation part.
Thank you so much, Asa. I love it. Okay, so a couple last things to consider, and I automated this one, Becky, so you're gonna have to click for me. Okay, so number one, this project has been recognized, and Pam mentioned this at the top, but I want to re-emphasize because this is super important. No other state has done what we have done. Civitech called us the best municipal data collection effort in the country. They literally want to use what we are doing as a model for the rest of their work across the United States. So after this project is done, I'm even going to be doing a training enablement session for them to walk through everything that we did to make sure they know how to replicate it across other states. So that's number one. And then number two, as before and as always, you will have our undying appreciation and for any time you spend helping us. So that's my call for volunteers. If you are interested, please let Becky know and she'll let me know, and Julie or I will be in touch shortly. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time.
Thank you to Tammy, thank you to Pam, thank you to Asa. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And let me also just pause here, because the short version of everything you just heard is that we need volunteers. We need volunteers to help with the municipal, and you don't have to have tremendous computer savviness. You might have to be calling individual municipalities to find out whether who's running and who won, and we cannot do this without you. So if you are willing to volunteer to help with this, if you would put your name in the chat and put voter guide in the chat, and we will be in touch and we will train you and we will support you, but we cannot do this without you. So please consider volunteering. Please put your name in the chat if you're willing to do it. We have some folks who helped last time. We are really hoping y'all will help again. I cannot emphasize enough how much help we need. So if you would put your name and in the chat and put voter guide or VG. Thank you. And let me we are running about 15 minutes behind. So I'm gonna try to do my section fairly quickly. And what I would like to do is just to say a little bit about how this has been used and the importance of municipal races. So it's been used both at the state level and at the national level. It's been used by campaigns, by activists, by state and local parties. And lots of ways it's been used nationally. One example is the national NAACP uses it to identify what municipal races are up this year so they know where to send poll watchers. It's also been used in two very important ways in partnership with national, with national partners. And let me take this off here for a minute. The first is that there's an effort, a national effort called Contest Every Race, that is about literally Democrats contesting every single race. And the way that they recruit, that they help do that is, for instance, in Georgia 2 years ago, they made a copy of the municipal section of the voter guide. They sent it to, they identified, because it's easy to know, which nonpartisan candidates were really Democrats and which were really Republicans. And the ones that didn't have contestants, that weren't being, the Republicans that were not being contested, they sent emails to all the intensely volunteering Democrats in that county or in that municipality to encourage them to run. They got in Georgia in 2019 321 candidates that otherwise wouldn't have run. Of those, 52 won. And that's because of the voter guide, right? That's because of the voter guide. And so I'm still pushing for volunteers here is what I'm still doing. And the next partnership is, as Tammy mentioned, with something that's called the Pipeline Project that Civitech is doing. And they are putting together every race in the country. And again, what they have described is that this is the gold standard of it. So that's all the pitch for volunteers and how crucial this work is. What I want to transition to is talking about how crucial municipal races are. You heard about it from Grace, right? I see PJ nodding, right? Because PJ knows the impact of municipal elected officials on communities. City-based school boards are up this year. Municipal city council races are up this year. These are races that, for a number of reasons, are so crucial. One is that they build the bench for upcoming Democratic leadership. Another is that they put progressive values and infrastructure out into the public dialogue. And these are races where we can make a difference, where we, right, even the people on this call right now, can make a difference because the numbers are small. This transitions to a second recruitment I want to do. Necessary Trouble needs to decide which, if any, municipal races we're going to get involved with this year. We need some help. We need a small number of people, not to do all the work, but to help identify which are the races that are most crucial for us to get involved with, where we can make a difference. I would love to help this effort, but we need a small group of people willing to think about this with us. If you are interested in helping in that process, if you would write your name and municipal in that in the chat, that would be great. Write your name and municipal if you are willing to help think about, plan, do a little research about which races Necessary Trouble should weigh in on. So thank you very much. We are going to transition now, and I want to transition to Judy Jones. And I want to say something before we transition to Judy. As everybody knows, unless you're brand new, Judy is a co-facilitator and co-coordinator with Necessary Trouble. We really missed her in May. She was out for health reasons. We are so happy to have her back. And what we realized is that we spend a lot of time focusing on some of the big nonprofit organizations, and that some of our members and our leaders have nonprofits that they have started and that they are maintaining, and we really want to shine a bright light on them. So, and Judy is one of those people. So Judy, I am going to turn this over to you, and I'm going to bring your slides up. And if you would, Judy, if you would unmute yourself, that would be great.
Thank you so much, Becky, for that introduction. And can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to just say this. I'm still a little bit in my feelings from the wonderful presentation that Grace did about CRT. All of you have done excellent presentations, but one of the things that I work with in this organization is young people ages 13 through 18. And so when we look at CRT, it's like the curriculum that we've already developed. Is that something that we're going to have to include? So let me go ahead and get started. The name of my nonprofit is Esteem Yourself High. And I am the founder and executive director. The organization was created in 2016. We can move on to the next slide. And this is a page, if you'll go back to the previous slide, please. This is a page that we have actually in our curriculum for the teen girls, Broken Crayon, Still Color. And what we say to them is, because we deal with teenage girls from marginalized and underserved communities, that although whatever you're going through, whatever your past has been, you actually, you still have a purpose and you still have value. We know that there is a bleak reality that faces Black girls and girls of color. There are rising school dropouts still, teen pregnancy, abuse. I also wanted to talk about the fact that something that may not be knowledgeable to many of you, because I found this surprising myself, and it is the fact that in 2019, the Centers for Disease Control, said that about 15% of Black female high school students attempted suicide in 2019, compared to 9% of white female students and 12% of Hispanic female students. Actual suicide death rates for Black girls ages 13 through 19 increased by 182% between the years of 2001 to 2017. Black youths are 2 times more likely to die by suicide compared to their white counterparts. So, we are a nonprofit organization. As I said, we were established in 2016. We can move on to the next slide. And we are dedicated to the healthy development of young women and girls of color, as I said, in marginalized communities. How it got started is I was asked by a faith-based organization in 2016 if I would facilitate a workshop to teach manners and self-esteem. And I have a degree in business administration, so I'm like, why would I be teaching manners and self-esteem to teenagers? I have one child who I raised as a single parent, and she turned out to be a decent human being, I'm proud to say. So the person who asked me said, we think that you have the qualities and capabilities to do this. So I ended up with about 48 girls, I'll never forget that. And we made the activities fun that weekend, and they were so engaged that they followed up with me. And so I thought, you know what, as I grew up, there was always someone in my life who was either a teacher, someone in the neighborhood who still, I recall, had an impact on my life. I saw the need that this did not just have to be one weekend. Let's do this on an ongoing basis. And so Esteem Yourself High was created. Prior to the pandemic, our organization became a catalyst for teen girls because we were having regular workshops for personal development. And we worked specifically with Title I schools. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Title I schools, they are those that are specifically, there are federal funds specifically given to those schools because of the large percentage of students in poverty that attend those schools. 75 to 90% of those students receive free or reduced lunches. So we work specifically with Title I schools. We're currently certified to work with Meadow Creek, Central Gwinnett, and Lilburn Middle School. And one of the future projects, or what we're working on currently, is to add more middle schools and high schools to our roster. We're currently concentrated in Gwinnett County. That's where I reside. That's where I've lived for the past 20 plus years. So I'm working specifically right now in Gwinnett County, and we are hoping in our 5-year plan to expand throughout the Metro Atlanta area. So again, what we do is we create opportunities for teen girls to celebrate, share, and participate in their evolving lives as young women. We have a curriculum that I worked with school administrators and educators on. The curriculum was certified that we could teach this curriculum, and it promotes emotional, mental, and social well-being, leadership skills, character building, and self-esteem, so that these girls may transition from a teenager to a productive adulthood, and they become self-sustaining citizens within society. And what really, part of the aim is that we seek to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty. What we found is that due to the stresses of their situations at home, that they're not exposed to an expanded view or understanding of opportunities outside of their own community. And so what we try to do is we offer mentors, we do with the workshops to help them understand that they're not stuck in this cycle, that it in fact can be broken. We're on a mission here to help produce strong female leadership in the workforce and in society by investing in young women and girls. And as I said, their collective well-being and power. I like to use Cori Bush as an example. Cori Bush was homeless at one point. You all know she's the congresswoman from Missouri. She was homeless at one point and receiving governmental assistance. But she had a catalyst of help. And the other part of what we do here is at Esteem Yourself High in the workshop is we look at what is not being taught in schools and at home, and we try to bridge that by having the workshops to teach that. So we partner, as I said, with Title I schools. We can move on to the next slide. Our goal is to equip teens with a team of highly qualified professionals to empower, enlighten, and engage through workshops and mentorship. And this is just to show you that this is our last workshop we had before the pandemic hit. We had Donna McLeod, our state representative, come and speak to our girls about civic responsibility and how being engaged in civics impacts your daily life, how elected officials impact your daily life. We had Patricia Morgan, who is the CEO of a technical company called Safe to Meet. She came and spoke to the girls about STEM. We also had a professional life coach come and talk to them because, as I said earlier, there's a lot going on with these girls in these communities at home. So we had a life coach and counselor talk to them. And we had a school administrator also come and talk with them. We had also, some of you may know Triana Arnold James. She's run for office a couple of times here in the state of Georgia. She was also Mrs. Georgia, and she talked to them in terms of motivating. So I wanted to just let you know that we have presenters and speakers that are leaders within the community that come and talk to the girls. We also have mentors that are leaders in the community that speak with the girls, and also on a plan of continuing to stay engaged with them until they get through the point where they are either planning to go to college, or for those that have no plans for college, we work with them for continuing education for on a technical skill that will allow them to sustain themselves in society once they graduate from high school. Okay, and the next slide is just an indication of what we had to do once the pandemic hit. Like many nonprofit organizations, we had to pivot. We no longer held the workshops, even though we could have held them via Zoom. The impact was not the same. So we were able to receive from Gwinnett County, we were given 500 food boxes on a weekly basis. Well, it started out with 200 and it got up to 500. And found that as we were distributing these food boxes, that the need for the demand for the food boxes became greater and greater. So we began renting U-Haul trucks in order to hold the masses of boxes, as you can see here, that we were loading, and also to get them out to the folks that were requesting these food boxes. And each week it would get more and more requests that we would receive. So we were paying for U-Haul, and they at some point, I must say, U-Haul did give us a 10% discount, but it still was money that as a nonprofit we were paying for. And so we have a fundraiser now that we're trying to get our own box truck, so we no longer have to rent a U-Haul truck to do our food distribution. We do this now on a bi-weekly basis, and I'm proud to say that as of June 1st, we had distributed food boxes to over 5,000 families in the state of Georgia, not just Gwinnett County. We've distributed food boxes as far as Savannah, Georgia. So we are going to continue to do that. And then these are just some testimonies from people thanking me, but it's not just me, they just know me. It's an entire team of people that help to do this. Okay, the next slide. So future projects is we have on our horizon, and this is for our last quarter in 2021 and for our first quarter in 2022. We're looking to enlist local businesses to mentor, apprentice, and hire teams from marginalized communities. I wanted to say briefly that when I was growing up, and this is a long, long time ago as a teenager, I was able to work under a federal program as a 14-year-old and earn money while I was out of school in the summer. And it taught me a lot, not only of building a work ethic, being on time for work, being disciplined if I wasn't, but also the fact that I got a check, how taxes were taken out, what FICA was. I was 14 years old, and I recall it was a federal program. So what we are looking to do is enlist local businesses to mentor, apprentice, and hire teams from marginalized communities, and especially those that are not looking to attend college or aren't able to attend college. We're also looking to increase our partnerships with middle schools, as I said before. And then we want to partner with social workers and psychologists to assist with teen mental health, because that's a major issue. A lot of these teen girls have issues going on at home, as I indicated before. So they need some counseling and help, and they need counseling and some mental health intervention. Also implementing a full-time tutoring program for the middle and high schoolers. That's integral to ensuring that they graduate on time. And implementing our youth workforce development program. What that is we have a vision to engage a team of educators, human resources persons, and image professionals to teach an 8-week program on work readiness and leadership skills, along with educational enhancement, so that they can land a job, keep a job, and advance in their careers. And this is more for those that are not seeking college, going through a college atmosphere after they graduate from high school. Restarting our personal development and leadership workshops. We're going to do that in September. Adding a grant writer to our staff. We have a part-time grant writer. We received 3 grants thus far, but we're looking for a full-time grant writer. And then successfully getting 1 major corporate sponsorship for the workshops that we're conducting. And finally, our last slide is how you can help. We have a fundraiser, as I mentioned before, going on, and that is to obtain our box truck. There is the link to the fundraiser. Both of these are links, for the fundraiser link, and then philanthropy. If you for those that are philanthropic, there's a link, or you can do it through the fundraiser link. We're also looking for a web designer. We actually had a 22-year-old wonderful web designer, and he went off to study. He's being educated in Spain for a year. So we need a web designer to get our website up and looking like we need it, and making all the changes, just being there to help us get the website up. Volunteers, of course, we can always use volunteers. What nonprofit does not work off of volunteers? Volunteers for presenters at our workshops. We also need volunteers for our food distributions. And we need volunteers that can assist us with posting on our social media sites. Mentoring, of course, that goes without being said. It takes a village of warm-hearted folks to affect young people. And so we need mentors that would be able to commit to helping us with these young women, young girls, and by providing guidance, helping them to set goals, exploring their careers, and identifying resources among other opportunities. If you can host a fundraiser, that would help us. And any professional services that you may contribute, you can send an email to us at esteemyourselfhigh@gmail.com. And then finally, we do have a Facebook page, Facebook and /Esteem Yourself High, if you like that. And you can see up-to-date information there as well. But I wanted to just say that what we are trying to accomplish here is close the gap of what is happening between what is not being taught in schools for marginalized, underserved teenage girls of color. And also we recognize, here's the thing, we've held workshops where we've had the parents come in for the first portion, because we know that raising up a child begins at home. And so if your child is lacking in some areas, a lot of the reason is the parents. So we have had workshops where we brought the parents in initially, and then they exit, and we have the rest of the day with the girls. But right now, our focus is on getting these girls understanding what's going on. I didn't lay out in that presentation exactly what the curriculum looks like, because it's very lengthy and cumbersome, and it's not necessary at this point to do that. But I'm thinking that depending on how the CRT goes, that may be something that we may need to add. But then it's not only these girls of color for the CRT, if that is added to our curriculum, we need all of the students to know about that. But I thank you all for allowing me to share with you about our organization and what's going on, and how we're trying to fill in the gap of what is not being taught to these girls. And I really appreciate Necessary Trouble for giving me the opportunity to do this as a troubler. Thank you all.
Judy, thank you so much. And I want to just make a pitch that those links, the links to donate, are in the chat. And if anybody is also available and willing to help with volunteering, if you would put your name in the chat and put Esteem, then we'll get those names to Judy and she will follow up on you. And I just want to really encourage folks. We've done a lot of supporting, both financially and with volunteer efforts of other nonprofits, and so important to really support those organizations and efforts that are being led by our own leaders and our own members. Huge gratitude to Judy. And Judy, can you and I just publicly put our heads together for one little minute here?
Absolutely.
Can we skip the breakouts that we were planning to do and go straight to the updates? Is that all right?
That is fine.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Okay, good.
So we're gonna transition, and thanks everybody for being nimble, as we have to do sometimes. So we are going to change gears here and go through the updates of our partners and work groups. We don't have time for updates from all the work groups, but the others that we hope to hear from at the next meeting for those that are not currently on the agenda. So we'll be hearing from updates for a couple of minutes, starting with Zan Thornton, who is a constant friend of NT and a frequent participant. She's with Georgia Adapt. So Zan, please update us about the Georgia Adapt lawsuit that's in place.
Whoops, you know what I'm seeing? I think she might have gotten dropped. She was having phone problems.
Okay.
What she did do, yeah, she had warned me that she might get dropped. So let's keep going.
Okay,
and then
yeah, if she comes back, we'll
keep an eye out. Yep, beautiful.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna move on to Karen McCowan to talk about redistricting. Karen, you want to give us an update on that?
Sure, absolutely. We've got a lot going on at Fair Districts, Georgia. As most of you know, this is the year that the General Assembly is going to redraw districts for redraw electoral maps for all legislative bodies. And the thing that is happening right now is that the General Assembly is starting to conduct hearings for public input about the redistricting process for Congress, State House, and State Senate. There is one tomorrow in Atlanta at the state capitol from 5 to 7 at room 341. You can go to our website, which you see there on the slide, and I'll put in the chat, to find out which ones are currently scheduled, and sign up for download a testimony toolkit if you want to sign up for to give testimony at those hearings. They're really important. Sign up for our action alerts at the Get Involved page, and you will get alerts for these events. We've got a number of ways to take action, including postcarding, which is being run by Pam Woodley. Pam is a very busy lady right now. But one of the things I'd like to encourage you to think about is, if you're ready to take on something new, we have a very active Letters to the Editor group that is doing a fabulous job and is getting published in publications large and small around the state. So again, I will post a link in the chat where you can sign up to volunteer for that, or just let me know in the chat. We are available to speak with your group about redistricting and some of the data analysis work we've been doing, and hope to hear from you.
Thank you so much for that, Karen. We appreciate that. Okay, our next update is going to be from the regional coordinator from National Indivisible Organization, Abby Tenenbaum. She has been a great supporter, and we really hope to hear much more from her. So we're going to give the space now to Abby.
Hey y'all, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm not on camera because I'm driving, and we know what that's like. So thank you all so much for just everything you do. I've been listening in to the whole call, and obviously talk frequently and closely with Becky and Pat, and I'm just so grateful for everything y'all are doing. It's incredible. So first off, just thank you. I'm not going to take too much time today, but just want to briefly talk about how important it is to keep in touch with our senators, even though I know sometimes it can feel like we won. Can't we sit back and not call them? The answer is they still need to hear from you. And a little bit of why. There's a couple reasons. A couple months ago, myself and some other indivisibles in the 6th district met with one of OSSOF's in-state staffers who said that about 90% of the calls that she gets are from opposition, from people who disagree with what Senator Ossoff is doing. And we can only assume that Senator Warnock and his staff are probably experiencing the same thing. So let's make supportive calls more than 10% of those calls, because they're doing incredible work overall. I also, we're lucky that they're doing great work. And also don't be afraid to push them if you ever think that they could go further or get to something quicker, or you want to voice a specific part of a bill that they're advocating for, but you really think is important. So just want to push you all to and encourage you all to make those phone calls, even if it's just a thank you call, like thank you for voting on this bill. That's great too. And I will even share a recent experience when I called one of Warnock's staffers about the For the People Act and getting the filibuster out of the way, which I'll get to in a moment. The staffer directly told me, please keep calling and have your friends call about the filibuster, which I thought was really interesting. And again, just goes to show that we can be making positive thank you calls and saying, I want you to do something more, and it can still be well received. So thank you for all that you're doing. And on that, I'm sure y'all are hearing a lot these days about the For the People Act and federal voting rights legislation. And if there is any time to hone in on passing this act, it is the next 2 to 3 weeks. As many of y'all probably know, because I know we're in a very politically active bunch here, the Senate just went on their July 4th recess. So they're on recess in district now through July 12th is when they'll go back. And then they've only got about 3 or 4 weeks before they go on a very long recess through August and most of September, which means we've got about 3 weeks when they get back in July to pass federal voting rights legislation. And the time crunch is because when they get back in September, a lot of the focus will probably be on the infrastructure bill and passing a budget. Understandably, those are going to take priority, and we might lose our window of opportunity to pass federal voting rights legislation. So we are lucky, again, to have 2 senators that have co-sponsored the For the People Act, which is fantastic. They still need to hear from you. So call every week through the summer, every day if you can. The nice thing about phone calls is it takes about 5 minutes to call both of them, and they're really positive, easy phone calls, which is always nice. And even more, if you have a personal story you can share, that's even better. I know senators really love to hear and share personal stories when they can. And even more so if there are specific parts of the For the People Act that you are really supportive of, like establishing nonpartisan redistricting commissions, public financing of elections, same-day voter registration, whatever it may be. It's always good to shout out those specifics too. So that is it from me. Just want to encourage you in general to call, even if it's a thank you call, and specifically to call over the next few weeks about the urgency of passing the For the People Act when they get back from July recess. And thank you all for letting me be here.
Thank you so much, Abby, for that update. We appreciate it. And as I said before, we do look forward to hearing from you at our future meetings. Stay safe out there. Okay, we're going to move on the updates, and Pat has an update regarding District Attorney Deborah Gonzalez. Pat, you want to go ahead and give us that update?
Sure. You all remember that we worked really hard to help Deborah Gonzalez get elected as the most progressive DA in the state of Georgia, elected as DA for the Athens-Oconee area. And now what we have an opportunity to help be part of and to observe and learn from is how does she create the changes that we want her to make? What's the system going to be for making a difference in how justice is handled in her district? What does this kind of reform look like in action? So one of the ways Deborah is going about making change is she's dedicated to keeping the problems in the community, so that dealing with addiction and other kinds of mental illness and other kinds of problems is to have the solutions there rather than using incarceration as a way to deal with these problems. And she's created a fund called Justice is on the Agenda. In her speech when she was sworn in as the DA for Athens Oconee, she said, justice was on the ballot. Now, justice is on the agenda. And that fund is there to help community groups so that Deborah can work with the groups to keep the problems and solve the problems in the community. This program is going to be on August 18th on Zoom from 7 to 8 o'clock. We skipped July because we thought everybody was just going to be thinking about vacations and coming back out of the pandemic. So please put this on your calendar. It's an important chance to learn about the changes that Deborah is making and the system that she's creating to give structure to those changes. The other two speakers will represent community groups. Shane Sims, who's the Executive Director of People Living in Recovery, and Marlon Tillman, who had talked with us at Necessary Trouble, talking about Gwinnett Stop, both of them emphasizing how do community groups work with the DA. So please, August 18th, it's going to be an interesting program and a chance for us to make some donations to Deborah's Justice is on the Agenda Fund.
Okay, thank you for that, Pat. Is August 18th, is that a Zoom meeting?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right, good deal. All right. Okay, moving right along. Next on our agenda, Pam Woodley. You've been up a lot. You're a busy lady here. Pam, you're going to be giving us the update on voter registration, and also Priscilla Smith's House District 34 runoff. That's extremely important. That's big news. Pam. Do we have Pam Woodley?
Hey, Pam, you might be muted. In
Yeah.
fact, you're definitely muted.
Yeah, she's here.
Judy, maybe we should go on and hopefully
Okay.
she'll figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next item. We're gonna our next item is voter protection update by Aquaria Richardson Smith. Aquaria, are you unmuted?
I am. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Perfect. So I am Aquaria Richardson Smith, and I'm so happy to be part of Necessary Trouble, getting into some good trouble. And with the voter protection group, what is happening, you all may have heard or from recent press from Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger that announced that they are purging over 100,000 voters. That just recently came out. And so what is happening is that Sarah Draper, the Director of Voter Protection, DPG, they're going to host a phone bank. It's going to start on Thursday. And what we're looking for is some people who are willing to help us with the phone banking. The times are, again, Thursday from 6 to 8, and it will continue Thursday, Tuesday until it's done. And what the goal is to reach out to the individuals whose names that are on the list, just to make sure that one is not have anything that's incorrect with the list. What I wanted to point out was that and I was going back through the article that this last month, I believe that Raffensperger removed 18,000 voters from Georgia's rolls. And so, but out of those 18,000, it was based on whether or not there were death notices or people that were no longer, I guess, in the state of Georgia. But essentially what has happened is, even though they removed those voters, it was already indicated that they had not, that there was not a ballot cast by those names. So you can see why it's very important for us to come out and definitely and phone bank and support this. Martha and I work with Martha on this. And so please look to hear from us specifically about what those details are going to be as far as helping with the phone bank. And if those who are not already currently with the voter protection group, if you would like to participate in this effort, which is extremely important, as we know with Senate Bill 202 that's out there and just everything that's happening within this political climate, that we want to make sure that people who are eligible to vote, who have the right to vote, have access to that. And so we hope that you all will join us. If you haven't signed up and wish and this speaks to you, please, by all means, put your name in the chat. And if you can put voter protection, that'd be extremely helpful. And we'll include you on our list and make sure that you get the information as well. Thank you.
Oops.
Thank you so much, Aquaria. I appreciate that update. We're going to move on. Did we get Pam back? Is Pam Woodley?
I don't think we got Pam Woodley back yet, so we might have to circle back.
Okay, no problem.
Next time.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to our update on diversity and inclusive communities with the wonderful Martha Laird. And I just wanted to just throw in a caveat about my girls. When I talked about volunteers, that is another opportunity for those of you that are working with Martha to engage in diversity and inclusiveness by working with these young girls of color. So with that said, Martha, can you give us an update on diversity and inclusiveness on your committee and unmute yourself?
Sure. Yeah, Judy. And that's a very good point about volunteering in both your effort for the Esteem Yourself High and some other efforts. What we've done is in support of our effort to for Necessary Trouble, to diversify both Necessary Trouble and our own personal lives, we've created a list of events and activities that are ways by which we can learn about and engage in diverse community activities. There's a link to the list of those activities that comes out in every other Necessary Trouble update. So look for it, and you can click on that link and go to both the description of the activity or event and then the website that you could get more information for it. There's also, and I'll put this in the chat, if after you look at that list, if you have other things that we should be adding to it, please send me that information. And this is a continuously growing list. So we want it to grow and grow. Just a quick report is that last week, one example, like Judy's with volunteering with Esteem Yourself High, is that about 7 or 8 of us went to the Freedom Rally for Voting Rights that was in support of the Freedom Riders that were going, eventually landing up in DC. And we went to there were 7 or 8 of us who joined, I'm not good at numbers, but at least 300 or 400 people that were at Ebenezer Baptist Church, lots of great speeches, music, singing, and immersion in diversity. So it was a great experience to solidify our effort for voting rights and for diversification. So just a quick update on that.
Thank you so much, Martha. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And unless Pam Woodley has come back, we're gonna, that's it for our updates with our work groups and partner updates. We will have more at our next meeting for those partner and work groups that we did not get to today because of time constraints. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Becky.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy. And I am looking at Kay Renee Robertson, who is still with us.